What's up, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Between the Cons. My name is Kris, and with me today, Kris Too.
Right here.
He's right there. He is. I'm looking at his headshot with his just smoldering gray eyes.
My smarmy face.
My smarmy face. That is not a compliment.
Actually, by saying right here, I mean the call is coming from inside the house.
Wow, that's a movie I never wanted to remember. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Man, what was that called? It was like Missed Call or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think even then that's a reference to other horror movies too.
Well, yeah, Scream did that.
Yeah,
right?
Scream and yeah. But
anyway, there was another one. There was another terrible movie. It had like Jessica Alba in it. When a Stranger Calls. That was it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, 1979. Scream quoted it, and then When a Stranger Calls 2006 was the remake that used that same line because it was so popular. But who was in that? I remember Tessa Thompson was in that. Tessa Thompson being Valkyrie from the upcoming Thor Ragnarok.
Who we just talked about in the last episode.
Yes, we did.
It all connects.
And if you haven't listened to the last episode, you should. Speaking of the last episode, things that you'll never hear. So at one point during the last episode, my dog decided he was going to jump up on me and put his paws on me. He does that when he's feeling needy. He wants some loving. But my wife wasn't home yet, so it was just me, and he was feeling very neglected. Jumps up on me, goes to put his paws up on me, and at that time, I had just put my arms down at my side, and I inadvertently knocked his paws off of me. So he it was like perfect timing. Like as soon as he was coming in, like my hand came down and like swiped him away. But my hand was right there, and he was falling as far as he was concerned. So he decided he was going to catch himself with his mouth, with his sharp, powerful jaws teeth. He's going to catch himself on my forearm. And he took a little chunk of skin out. And I said some words that I'm not supposed to say on this podcast, which is why you didn't hear him. Had to cut those out. So, but I am like dabbing blood off of my arm still, because we record 2 episodes at the same time, and that's how this works.
Yeah. No, he has not been bleeding for days.
Yeah, I've been bleeding for 4 days.
Go to the hospital, man.
But anyways, like we said on Thursday's episode, today we're talking about the content versus the creator. We've got a Topic Thunder episode for you. For those of you new to the show, Topic Thunder is where we take one overarching topic in our nerddom, and we dissect it a little bit. We give our takes on it. We talk about it a little bit, and then we open up to you guys for feedback to start a conversation. So today we're talking about the content versus the creator. So that being said, we're going to jump into Topic Thunder right now. Content or creator. So what I mean by that, I've said it a handful of times now. So if you're still here, I'm trying to clickbait you into further listening.
It's super catchy.
Right? I used alliteration because I went to a Southern Baptist church, and I learned that was how you get people to do what you want.
That's how they make their sermon notes. It's got to all start with the same letter.
Yeah, or it has to be like in some sort of order, like 1, 2, 3, ABC, something. Mm-hmm. It has to spell something. But content versus the creator, what we're talking about today is, it kind of seems over the last year or so, we've come into these situations where we have creators of content, whether that content be film, television, comic books, comedy, just entertainment content, creators of this entertainment content finding themselves blasted under the spotlight with their skeletons slowly being drugged from closets. Perfect example is Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
Bill Cosby, so much love for Bill Cosby. The Cosby Show, great show. He's a good stand-up comedian. I mean, he's an icon, honestly, in the comedy community. And then little thing happened where, come to find out, he's sexually assaulting and allegedly raping women.
Many women, many allegations coming forward.
Many. And it comes down to the situation of, like, I love the Cosby, like, the mindset is, I love the Cosby Show. I love Bill Cosby's comedy. But come to find out, Bill Cosby sucks as a dude.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're here to talk about today is how we kind of approach that in different scenarios and what the factors are in that. So I think with Bill Cosby, for me, I was never a huge fan of the Cosby Show. It had its moments. I liked his comedy, his stand-up, great stand-up. But I think the thing for me is coming to find out about Bill Cosby, there's a lot of his characters, like in television and movies, that gets super weird and really uncomfortable when it comes to be that he's a sex offender.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say, like, I refuse to be a fan of Bill Cosby now, like, or be a fan of Bill Cosby's work, because I don't feel that way. But I do think that it's weird now. It's definitely weird.
It is. And this is part of the reality, because we live in the 21st century when we just have more access to the personalities behind the stuff we consume. We get to not only read their stuff and see their stuff, but we also get to hear straight from them, lots of commentary. They're on Twitter, they're on
and we talked about
media, and
we talked about that with Kyle last week about Donald Trump. It's the same concept.
Yeah.
This generation has more access to everything than any generation before it, and that is
includes
only
the midnight rantings of our president.
Right, and that's only going to increase as time goes on.
So with that, combined with that, we also recognize in the things that we love, fandom plays a big part. There once was a time when I guess not really, well, but definitely our parents, they would consume media, and that was pretty much it. They were just consumers. But as time's gone on, the power of fans and the input of fans has wielded a lot of power.
Well, it's the power of the voice. Like, just
Absolutely.
as much as we hear more about our idols, icons, whatever you want to call them, they can hear just as much from us. And there's not some person like Santa Clausing his way through your tweets and reading everything, but like when there's a vast majority and a topic gets trending on Twitter, they're going to hear about it.
We've talked about how the results that fan outcry can get.
Right.
And so all of that comes down to, and we brought up Bill Cosby because he's probably the most famous example that we're going to talk about here. And it is something worth mentioning, because I'm sure that I'm not alone, and I'm sure Kris and I are not alone in this. I'm sure our listeners have felt this as well. When something comes out, some allegation, some horrible thing is revealed, or just something to reveal how the creator of some content that you love then is revealed to be a kind of a scummy person or an awful person, or they do or say something really terrible that you do not only not support, you oppose.
And it's not necessarily about their character either. Like, it doesn't have to be this person is a bad person.
But there is something that's been done that you don't like, that you don't support. And so then the question is, do I continue consuming this thing that I love that they create if I don't support what they're doing, but in the end I'm supporting them? And it's a hard, and by the way, we want to, before we dive any further into this, we're not here to be the definitive answer on this question.
Oh, absolutely.
I brought up this issue to Kris when we were talking about the topic for this episode, because it's something that I've been feeling and I've questioned, and partly this is what we're doing with Topic Thunder, is just kind of hash out our feelings about that.
Yeah.
And Bill Cosby is the big one that came up in news, but there's the one that really got me thinking on this was the recent stories the recent stuff that came out about Joss Whedon and his divorce. Quick Cliff Notes version of what happened. Back in August, it was revealed they chose Joss Whedon, and now his ex-wife chose to reveal that they had actually been quietly, secretly separated for like 5 years, and they were going through the divorce proceedings very quietly and privately. But then after all that finally was revealed, she also I should probably name her Kai Cole. She then recently threw out this account of her marriage to Joss Whedon, and that it had been a very happy marriage, but then in the proceedings of their divorce, it had been revealed that he had actually cheated on her a lot, and there was a lot of really
slimy,
dirty, slimy behavior on his part, which was really disappointing to hear, because Joss Whedon has been, I guess at the top, I've been a big fan of Joss Whedon's work for years and years, ever since his early work in Buffy. And he's also been a very outspoken proponent of feminism and feminist representation in all forms of media, film and television and writing. And he's been one of the champions of the feminist movement in popular media, for men, leading the charges.
Yeah.
We as men can support women and be feminists, and that's actually a good thing, and we support and celebrate powerful women, which is, and
I mean, there are entire panels at cons called "The Women of Whedon," because the man is known for writing such strong female leads. And
so with all of that, in the context of all of that, then when it comes out that not only, I mean, and this has nothing to do with the fact that he's getting divorced. Divorces happen. People's marriages fall apart for many, many reasons, and this is no way a judgment on that. But when in the proceedings of this divorce, it comes out, it's revealed that he actually behaved in a very slimy way, and he
pretty much the opposite of what he's been preaching.
Right, cheated on her, and specifically when you hear quotes that of him saying to her things like, "When I was running Buffy, I was surrounded by beautiful, needy, aggressive young women. I felt like I had a disease, like something from a Greek myth. Right. Suddenly I'm a powerful producer, and the world is laid out at my feet, and I can't touch it." Gross, man.
Yeah.
Come on. And it's really hard when, essentially, I try not to put people up on pedestals, but I mean, a man who's been a hero and an icon, then it's revealed that, you know what, he's human. Not only is he human, but he not only makes mistakes, but like behaves in really, honestly, despicable ways. What does that mean then for me as the fan going forward, when a big reason that I've enjoyed his works is because of the views that he has pushed and supported?
You enjoy his work, you enjoy his content more because of the respect that you have seemingly been duped into.
But I mean, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Firefly are two shows that, honestly, they get like annual rotations in our house.
Yeah.
Like, some time will go by, and then we'll just find our way back to watching this show, and then we'll watch the whole show again, probably on a yearly basis. It was one of the first things that my wife and I really bonded over, is our love of his stories. And really, how do we deal with that? And before I say what kind of where I've come down on this, I have friends who have been big Whedon fans, who say that they really can't in good conscience support his work anymore. and that not only means that they don't watch any new things that he does, but they've gotten rid of their Firefly DVDs and their Buffy DVDs, and that's really hard for them because they really enjoy the content. But for them, and I guess I should also say that many of these friends that have said this to me are women, and we go into this podcast very aware of the privilege that we as white men enjoy, and the fact that we don't deal with a lot of the issues that other people do deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah,
so
and I'll even jump in before you give your stance, just to play a little bit of devil's advocate, to give a hot take. When I first read this, like, there were, and I honestly haven't brushed up on the facts since. So there were only like a couple quotes. And when I read it, I read a man who has been frustrated for the last 5 years in this separation, who has been going through a very stressful time in his life, and frankly lashed out when some stuff he didn't want to know was uncovered. Yeah. Because when I read this, there was no timetable for when the cheating had happened or whatever. And given I am very much a Joss Whedon fan, so I was trying to justify this for him. So it was like, maybe it happened while he was separated and he was lonely and it happened and he felt bad about it. But it kind of sounded like he was more lashing out and saying hurtful things for the sake of hurtful things. And from my perspective on that, it's like, who hasn't what man hasn't said something like that about anyone? What woman hasn't said something like that about anyone? Like, stuff like that comes out when you're frustrated or angry.
Divorce proceedings aren't happy times. They're rough emotional times. And it also should be said with the caveat that, like, all of this information came from
the divorce
Kai
proceedings.
Cole, the divorce proceedings, which is a very stressful time. And also, it should be said with the caveat that people who are recently divorced sometimes say crappy things that are also exaggerated about one another because they're in a lot of pain.
Right.
And that is not saying that I don't believe Kai Cole.
Yeah.
And that is not saying that Joss Whedon is justified in his behavior.
Yeah, and I want to clarify, I don't think he's
justified
in saying it. But
and also we as the audience are only getting a very limited perspective on all of this stuff.
Oh, for sure.
But having said those caveats, moving forward, it does make an issue when, like, next time I want to watch Buffy, or next time I want to watch Firefly, it's part of the question that comes into this is that the character of Joss Whedon is very closely interlinked with his content, and I associate that with him. How do I deal with this? Specifically with Joss Whedon, I can't remember who the writer is now, and I wish I had saved the link when I first read it about a month ago. But one writer that I read basically said Joss Whedon doesn't get to ruin Buffy because of his behavior. He doesn't get to ruin Firefly because of his behavior. He doesn't. And I think I've mentioned this on the podcast on an episode not too terribly long ago, that part of my personal belief about content that creators make is, after the creators make the content, yes, they should get paid for the work they make, and yes, they do have some ownership over it in that way. But at the same time, once content is created, and the way fandom works these days, once content is out there, it belongs to the fans too.
Yeah.
We've seen that with comics. We've seen that with popular shows. And also, it doesn't, and even going beyond that, bad behavior on Joss Whedon's part doesn't negate the truth of what he was championing before all of this came out. It doesn't negate that, yes, the things he said about female representation in film is still true. It's not false just because he behaved poorly. Now, all I'm saying is that comes from my personal belief about content. belonging just as much to the fans as it does the creator once it's out there. That doesn't mean that for some of my friends who feel more personally the effects of misogyny when they see someone who is a champion for them, then in a way their behavior almost feels like a betrayal. Their response then is, well, I can't support his work anymore. I can't say they're wrong. They do what they're responding in a way that
they seem fit.
That they see fit, and I can't disagree with that. You mentioned that for you, you mentioned the stuff about Bill Cosby, that you still enjoy you still liked his work, but also what you said about his person, his character is so connected to his work because he was a stand-up comedian and he performed in the things. And yeah, when you go back and watch the Bill Cosby Show, in light of
knowing what you know now,
information, there's some things that really don't.
They just shake you now.
Good. Yeah, don't feel good.
It's the same. I feel like it would be the same thing with Joss Whedon. I personally haven't gone back and watched any of the Whedonverse since all of this happened. But I'm sure if I go back and listen, or not listen, go back and watch, there's going to be something that's going to get said in an episode or said in one of his films that he's worked on that's going to make me think about it.
Or I know I'm going to be watching Buffy and I'm going to wonder, even though I do believe from a film study perspective that Joss Whedon doesn't shoot women on film in voyeuristic manners. Mm-hmm. He shoots them in empowering manners, empowering stances, just like a man would be shot. But at the same time, part of that's going to wonder, okay, who on the set was he cheating on his wife with, and what and how did that affect how he wrote the story or how he wrote the characters?
And who was he referring to as whiny and annoying?
It's really difficult, and these are not isolated incidents either, guys. That's the other thing that's really difficult, because just throwing out some other just quick examples. The very successful author Orson Scott Card, celebrated sci-fi author, writes great stuff, really thought-provoking material, but then he also is a very vocal opponent of gay marriage, and especially for sci-fi, the realm of sci-fi being one where very often it's an opportunity for people to explore very forward-thinking ideas. It's very unsettling when you have an author who is so revered and so loved for his works, then being very vocal about his opposition for equal rights for people that would make up just statistically a very significant portion of his audience, because just statistically how many gay people out there probably read his works. And again, we are straight white men, so we know that doesn't hit as close to home for us as it would for someone who is gay, and that would be very difficult for them to stomach. And so then when you hear about like the Ender's Game movie getting boycotted, and a lot of people were saying, oh, they're just whining and they're just wanting to make something out of nothing. Yeah. No, for them it is something. It's really upsetting when someone who believes that you don't deserve equal rights is then getting praised for their work, and they're getting paid for their work, and they're getting to enjoy time in the spotlight for their work, while at the same time using that platform to speak out against your equal rights. Right. Orson Scott Card is an example. Recently, we've talked on here about the really crummy behavior of Johnny Depp. Mm-hmm. And there's all the stuff that came out about his just unprofessional behavior on the set of Pirates of the Caribbean, the most recent one, whatever it's called. Whatever that one is. Yeah, the one that I didn't see.
His wife Amber Heard, or fiance.
Yeah. As a professional actor, I hear the way he behaved on set, and it just makes me just shake my head, because it bothers me, since I'm trying to make a living as in performance and in theater. Then I hear somebody who has this position. It really sucks to hear, man, he's just abusing his popularity. He can kind of do whatever he wants on set because he's Johnny Depp. But that's just for me. That's just a personal, I look down on that from a professional standpoint. But then when the information comes out about the physical abuse of Amber Heard,
right?
Which I don't think it's very I don't think it's very controversial of us to say that we here on Between the Cons do not support spousal abuse.
We do not officially.
Yeah, we officially come out against spousal abuse. It's not gonna. I don't think we're gonna ruffle any feathers by saying that.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
So, but really, I mean, just one of the worst behaviors in the world to in any way raise your hand to your wife, and then seeing that combined with just Johnny Depp's all around just kind of
demeanor,
yeah, just his very entitled, very self-important demeanor makes it really hard to me to handle the idea of like, do I even want to watch a Johnny Depp movie anymore? Do I want to support this guy? Because not only do I think he's kind of he's incredibly unprofessional, but also he's a wife beater. And
well, then, and this is a great example because Bill Cosby, you got the Cosby Show, you got pudding commercials, you got stand up. Like that's pretty much it.
And he's also hasn't been doing a lot of stuff recently.
Right.
Because he's old. I mean, he's not
exactly.
He's not as relevant.
Johnny Depp. I mean, even Joss Whedon, Firefly, Buffy.
Yeah.
He's got good stuff, but he doesn't have mainstream good stuff. Johnny Depp, like to say I stand so firmly against what Johnny Depp did that I am no longer going to support him or any project he works on. Johnny Depp has acted in 88 different titles.
And he's still
88.
Working a lot.
He's still working a lot. He's 54 years old. He's worked on 88 titles. And I'm trying to quickly scroll to the bottom. 1984, A Nightmare on Elm Street was his first acting gig. So in 30 years, he has worked on 88 titles. So that's one thing that is like, again, playing devil's advocate here. That's one thing that's hard for me to believe. Like that these people are going to say, I'm not going to watch anything again that has Johnny Depp in it. It's like, well, how bold are you going to make that statement? Because Johnny Depp was in an episode of King of the Hill. So are you going to boycott the entire series of King of the Hill because of one episode where Johnny Depp played a yogi? Or are you going to do the same thing with SpongeBob SquarePants because he was in an episode of that as like a ripoff of Captain Jack? Like, how far are you willing to take this boycott of content due to a creator's behavior?
And it is worth noting. I mean, like some people write. I mean, and also I know we live in the age of social media where people like to make stands on social media, but then they go right back to living their lives because it's very easy to be. It's the armchair activism. It's really easy to post something from Facebook and then go on with your day. But I mean, and some of these people, some of the people I've talked to, I doubt that they'll follow through with it. Others, knowing what I know about them, yeah, I fully believe that. And also, we live in a time of so much content. If you want to avoid something, even as someone as popular as Johnny Depp, you can.
Harry Potter.
There is so much. Yeah, I mean,
Harry
there's
friggin'
so
Potter.
Much content. There's so much content out there, though.
He was Grindelwald in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Him. So now you have made the connection that J.K. Rowling allowed Johnny Depp to play this character, and now J.K. Rowling is a bad person because she supported Johnny Depp. So now I have to boycott all of J.K. Rowling, and you have to boycott the most successful film franchise of our generation. Like, I mean, how far does this go? From a boycott of content.
Yeah, it is incredibly difficult. Like, where do we draw the line?
Exactly, and that's my thing.
And part of it also, I mean, part of the question, I guess, of this, and again, these are just questions that we're asking, guys. I don't have a definitive answer because if I can be perfectly honest with our audience, I'm still figuring out what I think about a lot of these things. not easy. I don't support it, but then what do we do to actually what do you do to actually make a stand, to make a statement, to communicate your support or lack of or refusal of support?
Right.
I do believe fandom has power because we've seen examples of fandom getting things done. So like the question is like, do you want to like?
Am I right, George Lucas not owning Lucasfilm anymore?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yes. I mean, exactly. There are examples of fandom getting the work done. So, and for many people, it's the thought of like, well, these studios shouldn't be hiring Johnny Depp anymore because they shouldn't be supporting someone who is an abuser. But of course, studios are going to go where the money is, and audiences are still going to watch Johnny Depp. Then they're going to follow the money.
And that's stupid as far as I'm concerned. And I'm going to rant for a second.
Okay.
That's stupid as far as I'm concerned, because when it comes to me personally, there's the content and the creator, and they are separate entities. Even in comedy, the stand-up is a stage persona. It is not the way that person actually acts, that actually lives their life. They don't actually sound like that. Like, it's the same thing with film. Film is content. It's way more like fiction than it is reality. And for me, it comes down to this. If you support it, or if you choose to boycott, because that's the word that's coming to mind, which is why I keep using it. If you choose to boycott the content, you have to draw a line. And Johnny Depp is a perfect example of that, because Johnny Depp has in some capacity anger issues, and he hit his wife or his fiance. What caused those anger issues? Was it the booze? Was it the drugs? If it's the booze and the drugs, blame the studios that hire him. If it's that, he's getting hired because people are watching his movies. And if people are watching his movies, then he's getting bigger paychecks. Throughout his entire career, he's getting a bigger and bigger paycheck. And when it all comes down to it, he's getting a bigger paycheck to pay for the drugs and booze that put him in a mood where he has little patience with his fiance and feels that the only point of, the only thing he can do at that point is to physically lash out, which I do not agree with. But he gets into that position because the drugs he's taking, because of he has all this money that he can afford it and it not impact his day-to-day. Because we are watching his stuff. Because we have watched his stuff. So when it all comes back around, in this particular case, where are you willing to draw the line in tracing back why Johnny Depp did what he did? Because at some point, the finger gets pointed at you. Whether it's about it
exactly
because he's famous now, or he did it because the drugs, because the studios paid him, because you went to go see the movie. So that's the thing for me, where it's you have to draw the line somewhere.
And it's and I mean you're very much I totally see what you're saying too, because I mean, again, as an actor, I've worked professionally as an actor, and when I perform, Kris, I'm not the person that I'm playing, and neither is there. And if people enjoy my work, they're not getting to know me. It is exactly separate. There is a distinction. Right. There are. I mean, and this is going into a whole bit of performance theory about how much of a creator's personality goes into their work, and that's a whole other thing. But I mean, you are right. You are absolutely right, and you're right also. If you pull a string long enough, if you pull the thread long enough with the blanket, the whole thing will come unraveled, because you could ultimately connect everybody to everybody and everything to everything, and this person is being blamed, and we're blaming Johnny Depp for his bad behavior, but we're also blaming the studios for supporting him. We're also blaming the consumers for supporting him, which leads to studios supporting him. It's a whole big mess.
Yeah, it's a butterfly effect.
Which is why I'm not saying that which is why we're not coming on here to make the statement to the audience, you all should boycott Johnny Depp, the end.
Right.
But the questions and the issues are still worth are still worth exploring and are still something to wrestle with, because again, it's not an easy thing to stomach when I now know that Johnny Depp has behaved in a horrible way and has been a horrible human being. But then, am I going to go, like, then the next question is, am I going to go watch the next Fantastic Beasts movie that he's going to have a key part in, or am I going to go watch the Murder on the Orient Express, the Kenneth Branagh movie that he's a character in, and he's and it's not easy. It's not easy, guys, and this is kind of what we're talking about here.
For me, it's, and I'm starting to realize this as we're having this conversation. For me, that's what they content. Do. It is content versus creator. It's not the creator's content. It is, the content is its own thing. Like, when I hear that Johnny Depp hit his wife, I don't get mad at Edward Scissorhands. I don't get mad at the Mad Hatter. I don't get mad at Captain Jack Sparrow. I enjoy those characters. Those characters didn't do anything.
And again, when people, and it's very, and it is like I said, I do agree that they are not the same person. They're not the same thing. But also when people say, well, I don't want my money to be going to support this person who has then done this bad thing. It's fair. And it's really,
don't throw out every movie you already own. Just stop going to see the new ones.
And it's also the hard reality of, like, again, for some people, they really do closely connect those people.
Sure.
And also for some people, I mean, like, and again, I think it's also somewhat on an individual basis, because again, if we're saying that content is separated from the creator, that also means that there's also part of your experience with a piece of art, with a piece of media, isn't entirely just summed up in the thing that's presented to you. It's also what you as the audience are bringing to it. Mm-hmm. And so I, as the audience, am going to get something a little different out of a comic book than you are going to get out of it, than my wife is going to get out of it, because we're all bringing our different experiences to it. So someone who has suffered domestic abuse, if they then go into the saying, well, then I absolutely can't watch something that Johnny Depp's in, because now all I see is the face of an abuser. And they're not wrong, because that's part of their experience. So that's part of what I guess what we want to bring in, because again, we're not trying to make a definitive statement about what our audience should do. Rather, I guess like you just said, I'm realizing this as we're talking it out. It's also, like, I guess, coming up with responses to different things that people might say to these things, because our audience may listen to our podcast, and when the next Fantastic Beasts movie comes out and we review it, the question you might ask is, well, why are they reviewing that movie? Isn't Johnny Depp a horrible person? Why are they supporting this movie?
Yeah.
And that's part of what we are not supporting him as a human being, or his behavior, or saying that what he did is good, or it should be forgotten. But at the same time, we're not reviewing Johnny Depp the person. We're reviewing a movie, a fictional story that he played a part in. Right. Again, and I can also, but also at the same time, I can totally see how somebody who can't, someone who has suffered domestic violence, to them that sounds like a cheap excuse. Right. And ultimately, you're getting down to the exchange between human beings that's, we don't have the answers, nor can anyone fully understand or appreciate the full scope of human experience that every single person can go through. We do our best on it, and that's ultimately what it comes down to, because I know we're going to be talking about since we've mentioned Johnny Depp and Joss Whedon most really prominently on this episode, Joss Whedon did significant work on the Justice League movie, and we're going to be talking about it we've already talked about it a lot, and we're going to be talking about it some more. And Johnny Depp's going to be in the new Fantastic Beasts movie, so we're going to be talking, because that's what we do here on Between the Cons. We talk about content that nerd culture loves, and giving our takes on it. So all of that say, how do we then contend with this? I think part of what you've talked about, Kris, is really hitting. We try to, here on the podcast, try to approach it as the content is what you guys are interested in. It's what we're interested in. Right. We love the stories. We love these fictional characters. these characters have taught us lessons that we firmly believe in. The lessons that honestly, like, I mean, I think I don't want to speak for you, Kris, but I definitely, the person that I am has been largely shaped by these stories that I've consumed.
Certainly. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what we're here to talk about. That's what we're here to enjoy and pick apart together, make fun of together, celebrate together. That's what we do. But then when we have when the creators when there are people that make this stuff, do this great work over and over again, of course we're going to talk about them. And this person that has a track record, we're going to be looking out for their stuff. Then the more you follow these people, the more you see that some of them aren't great people. So, or some of them maybe at one time, like they were great people and then they made a mistake, or they were great people.
Look at
and they
Robert
did something
Downey
horrible.
Jr.
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. was a piece of garbage, a piece of absolute garbage in the 80s and 90s. Terrible person. Went to prison, fulfilled his sentence in prison. Like, not a good dude. And now we talk about him constantly because he's Tony Stark.
And he did go through a period of essentially, for lack of a better term, of
enlightenment.
And also like kind of making up for his bad time in the eyes of the public. So then, and then of course I can, as I'm saying that, I can already hear people that I know and love and respect saying to me, well, then you should not support these horrible people until they make restitution for their behavior. And I'm not saying that they're necessarily wrong. I'm not saying that they're right either. It's because again, if we're going to start cutting things off because of the content creators, the question is, where do we stop? For you, Kris, you were saying it's you draw a nice hard line between content and creator. Some people I know, for them, they can keep going with Joss Whedon's work because they don't like what he did, but they still love his work. But then when the moment that you have a character that's doing domestic abuse, they draw a hard line there. Everyone has different lines. Everyone has different boundaries. Everyone has different points that they can't support something anymore. So all we're saying, I guess, and if I know we should probably wrap this up here.
Yeah, probably.
We do encourage. This episode was largely us just kind of bringing up these issues and then just kind of talking them out. And it was kind of nice because, like you said, Kris, we kind of were working things out as we talked to them. Mm-hmm. And we'd love to hear from you guys about your thoughts on these things. I mean, talk at us on social media. Let us know what you think and your thoughts. And these are only a couple of the examples. There have been other content creators that have also done really horrible behavior that you start asking a question: will I support them anymore? But also, if nothing else, we want to encourage the conversation. These conversations aren't always fun, but they're conversations that we should have. And certainly, you're going to, when you go out, when you inevitably
to know where you stand.
Yeah, and when you're talking about nerd culture, you're going to run across somebody that is going to
is very opinionated.
That is very opinionated, yes, and is also going to ask you, why do you support that person? Don't you know all the horrible things they've done? And it's really easy to respond in a hostile manner. But at the end of the day, I hope all of us nerds are all on the same side. And that side is supporting one another, supporting one another's love of the things that we love, and supporting our communication with one another through these stories.
As a podcast that revolves exclusively around pop culture, it's important to know where you stand.
Yes.
A lot of opinions these days are force-fed. And we consume the opinions of a news website or of a podcast or of our neighbor or our parents or our siblings or whoever. It's important to think about it yourself and talk it out and talk yourself through it and know where you stand on subjects like this. Yeah. This is a weird one. I'm getting uncomfortable talking about this.
Yeah,
but that's a good thing.
Exactly. And that's the thing. We hope that you, as we're wrapping this up, we hope you guys don't feel like we were preaching at you. Because we actually talked before this. We didn't want to go into this telling people how they should think. More so that we just saying that you should be asking yourselves these questions and deciding for yourself. Exactly. You should know where you stand. You should, and don't be afraid of these kind of conversations, because as much as we can have, we have plenty of fun conversations about goofy, silly stuff, and we love to poke fun and laugh. But don't run away from these heavier, more serious conversations, because they're just as important. And
exactly,
nerd culture is not going away. Fandoms aren't going away. Fandom influence isn't going away. And we're only going to know more about the intimate lives of our content creators as we move forward in time. And we're going to see some things that we don't like. We're going to see some skeletons in those closets. And it's up to every single person to decide how they want to move forward with that knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's all we can do. So,
and that's it. I mean, like, think about it. I mean, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to talk about it. If you want to talk about it, hit us up. Send us a Facebook message. Send us a DM on Twitter.
I have no doubt that some people out there disagree with us, and that's okay.
I mean,
talk to us.
Even if you don't know where you stand and you just want to talk it out, let's start a conversation. If you don't like what we've said, if you disagree wholeheartedly, or if you agree wholeheartedly, hit us up. Let us know.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. This is an important thing that we need to talk about. So let's flesh it out.
Yeah.
But all of that to say, there's been some cool stuff that Kris and I have experienced lately.
Mm-hmm.
And we would like to tell you about that in our jams.
What's your jam?
So, Kris.
Yeah.
What's your jam?
So, my jam is it's a. I mean, I know we're a family-friendly podcast, but I can talk about beer on here, right?
You can totally talk about beer. Let's talk about beer.
Yeah. So, I have found a new love in beer, and it is sour beers.
Yes.
Man.
So
my
good.
I mean, in the last few years, we've enjoyed a craft beer revolution, and there's so many good craft beers out there. There's a lot of bad ones out there too, but because there's so many things out there, people are trying all kinds of new things. And one of the things I've been most excited about in craft beers is this new movement of sour beers. My wife and I like to go to beer tastings and festivals and things like that, and try out new beers. And she's not one for the sour beers, but man, I am loving this new crop of sour beers that have been coming out. It's so good, guys. And if you and for people out there, if you don't like beers, oddly enough, I've been able to convince some people that aren't really big into beers to try sour beers, and they really like them. Because it's very different from the.
It is very different, and it doesn't have that hoppy beer taste.
No,
that people hate.
No, like most people that don't like beers, they say to me, "Well, it's so bitter." Well, yeah, that's beer. Beer's going to be bitter. It's
exactly
degrees of bitterness, but it's there. So, but then we have these sour beers. Very often, they have fruit. They have some kind of fruit base to them, either like a tangerine or a raspberry or something like that.
Raspberries are my faves.
Yeah, I love
raspberry sours.
I love the orange sours. Man, they're so good. They've got that nice sour, tangy. And again, I've got a couple friends that, and family that they're like, I really don't like beer. It's like, okay, well, here's this nice, sour, crisp, orange beer or raspberry sour beer, and I have them try that, and they're like, oh, this is really good. It's not bitter at all. Yeah, because it's a completely different type of. Yeah, so go forth and enjoy. So that's just been my jam, man. My wife and I went to a beer festival tasting thing down in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I think about a month and a half ago, and we were trying a lot of different beers, and they were all some really good ones. But then I found a whole selection of sour beers, and my world was rocked. I was so excited. So it's been really cool. So that's my jam. Is just sour beers in general. I'm still looking for a couple of those beers that were at that festival because I can't remember what they were called.
Ouch, that sucks.
Well, I mean, I did try a lot of tastings. So
yeah, it was a beer festival.
It was a beer festival, so I have a hard time remembering. Surprise. But
take photos. Take photos. If you learn anything from this jam, it is that if you find a beer that you enjoy at a beer festival,
take a photo next to
pull
your
your phone
tent
out and you take a photo.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's my jam, man. Sour beers. Loving some of those sour beers. I just bought some Little Miss Sour from the Chandelier Brewing Company, and it is delightful.
The good stuff.
The good stuff. So yeah, that's my jam. So Chris.
Yes.
What's your jam?
I have two jams, and they're both television jams, and they are along the same lines. Jam number one. If you have not seen Star Trek Discovery, what is wrong with you?
I don't have CBS All Access.
Does not matter. Star Trek Discovery is worth. See, I don't know how much CBS All Access is, so I might be blowing smoke. Star Trek Discovery is perfect. It is an excellent TV show. It is such an outstanding precursor to The Next Generation, to the Star Trek that we know and that we love. And it's in the little things. But overall, it's an excellent show, but the magic is in the little things.
I've heard great things about the details in this show.
One of the things that my wife actually pointed out yesterday, as we were watching episode 4 of Star Trek Discovery, was this takes place before TNG. So Klingons in TNG are like, they look a lot like gross-looking humans.
Yeah, with really bad foreheads. Yeah,
even in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek Into Darkness, I think, was the one with Klingons.
Yeah.
They just look like ugly humans. In Star Trek Discovery, which takes place before, they look very primitive. Given it's only 30 years before, so there's something that happens that changes their overall appearance, but they look very primitive. Their heads are very, like, they have very sharp angles. They're very blocky, I guess is a good word for it.
Sure.
But the show it's fantastic. It is so good.
I need to watch it. I hate that I haven't seen it yet.
The second TV jam, and hear me out before you shut me up. The second TV jam is The Orville. It is a hilarious, perfect spoof TV show. Now, that being said, it is a spoof of TNG, Star Trek The Next Generation style space sci-fi. Also, do not, if you have not seen The Orville, you cannot go into The Orville expecting a Seth MacFarlane animated series level comedy. Even going back and looking at Seth MacFarlane, when you look at A Million Ways to Die in the West, a lot of people did not like that movie because it wasn't Family Guy. Well, no, it's not Family Guy because it's not friggin' cartoons. Like, it's real people having to sell real jokes. Like, you can do whatever you want with a cartoon because in the end, it's a friggin' cartoon! Like, you don't have to sell a joke as a cartoon because you're a cartoon. People have to sell jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Seth MacFarlane's way of writing human people jokes is very sly. It's witty. It is sarcastic, and it's quick humor. Like, it's the kind of thing where if you didn't catch it, you missed the joke for that like 2 or 3 minute span. So if you're not paying attention, you're not going to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
But The Orville is hilarious. It is a very, very funny show. It's a little bit topical. It is a little preachy at times in a funny way, like in a comedy kind of way.
Sure.
But it's fantastic. I think it's hilarious. There was a conversation happening between you and I think Steven and Kyle.
Oh, on our chat.
Yeah, in our co-host chat about how it was terrible. And I started watching it, and I completely disagree.
Well, I should say in that chat, I was just voicing what I had heard of reviews.
Yeah.
I have still not seen it. It is. I've been
I
really
stand
busy,
by
so
it.
like,
For the nerds, for anyone who's a fan of Star Trek Next Generation, or even a fan of the slow moments, air quotes, that you can't see, the slow moments in Star Wars, it's a lot of that. Like, it's just really funny space humor, like sci-fi space humor, and it's great.
well,
I don't understand why people don't like it.
Well, I'll definitely be checking it out. It's on the list of things to watch as soon as my current show opens.
Yeah.
As soon as I'm done with that, I can have time.
It's actually smart humor, not Big Bang Theory smart humor.
Well, that's a relief. That right there, I'll definitely watch it now.
It is intelligent, witty comedy. And if you are not intelligent, witty, or able to keep up with either, you probably won't find it funny. But it is a very funny show.
Well, cool.
But those are my two. And I say they're similar because Michael Ann and I were actually talking last night about how we keep getting some of the characters confused. Because they're similar. They're incredibly similar, intentionally so. The Orville is a spoof of Star Trek.
Yeah, and Star Trek, one thing they were really good at is they would have character types in every series.
Yeah, exactly. And there's this character in Star Trek Discovery called Saru, played by the same guy that played Abe Sapien in Hellboy.
Oh, in Hellboy, yeah.
I can't remember his name, but he was also in
Doug Jones.
Doug Jones, that's it. He was also in, like, he was everything in Pan's Labyrinth.
Right.
Pretty much. That's what it felt like. But he plays this character called Saru, and we were watching Star Trek Discovery last night, and Saru came on, and I was like, oh, wait. I thought he was from Star Trek. This is we're watching Star Trek, not the Orville. Man, this is complicated. But that being said, that's perfect. That's genius on Seth MacFarlane's part to have this show come out at the same time as Star Trek Discovery. Whether that was intentional or not, it's brilliant. But yeah, I think both of those shows are must watches for the nerd community. They're very, very good in very different ways, and honestly, it's a relief to get space shows that are like good nerd TV shows that aren't revolving around a superhero.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I'd say that, but it's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and it'll be, and I mean that's why I was excited about Star Trek Discovery, and I'm going to watch it. I just need to get on that. I don't know. So.
Need to do it.
Need to do it.
But yeah, that's my jam, and that's honestly that's the end of the show.
Cool.
That's everything we've got to talk about. I don't need to get on that rant anymore. I feel like I've ranted enough tonight. But all of that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Check out our website, betweenthecons.com. Subscribe to the show. We're going to be back every Monday and Thursday until forever, pretty much, except for like Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah.
We won't have shows that week.
We got families.
We'll be around. So hit us up on the internet, on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Be our friend.
Mm-hmm.
And tune in on Thursday. We're going to be back. We're going to be talking about the news. We're going to be hitting the headlines, giving you our takes. So Don't miss it. Tune in, subscribe, betweenthecons.com. Do it. You guys have a great week. We'll talk to you on Thursday.
Later. I could peek, but I'm not gonna.